This is S1 correlation. This is the first video. So in this topic, we're going to be looking at sets of data which are called bivariate data. Bivariate means two variables. So for each observation, we're going to have two variables, and we normally denote them x and y. So one of them will be plotted on the x-axis, one on the y-axis. The ones on the y-axis, we tend to call the response variable. Um, and then the one on the x-axis is generally called the explanatory variable. So you need to learn those two terms. There are some alternatives. The explanatory, that's the one on the x, is sometimes called the independent variable. And if you were doing a scientific experiment, that's the one you can control. So you might, for example, change temperature and look at the effect on a certain reaction. The reaction you can't control, you would plot that on the y-axis, and that's called a dependent variable. So it depends on what you do with the x value, what happens to the y value. So when we're looking for a relationship between these two variables, x and y, we use the term correlation. And in S1, we're only looking for linear relationships. So we're looking for a straight line relationship between the two variables. We tend to draw a scatter diagram, which you'll probably be used to from school. And you'll see there's three diagrams here, and we've got to match them up with the correct one. So a negative correlation, as one variable increases, the other decreases. Well, if you look at the pictures, let's have a look at this bottom one. As this variable goes bigger, the y values are actually coming down. So as x increases, y decreases. So that is that one. A positive correlation, as one variable increases, the other increases. Well, that's this top diagram, because as the x values get bigger, the y values also get bigger. And then no correlation, no straight line linear pattern can be seen. It is possible that you would get something like this. And you might say, well, that's roughly a quadratic shape. And when you go on to university, you might study statistics and come up with different kinds of models, like quadratic models. But at A level for S1, we're only looking for a linear pattern, and there is no linear pattern there. You can see again on these diagrams, drawing in the quadrants, x bar is the mean. So if you work out the mean of all the x values, the mean of all the y values, you could draw 4 quadrants. And for a positive correlation, they'd be in the top right and bottom left. For a negative, top left, bottom right. And for the third one, they'd be pretty evenly spaced. So that's another way to visualize it in your mind. So example one, we've got a Spanish course and students doing a listening test and a written test. They're both marked out of 25, and we've got 8 students here. So you'll notice we've got 2 values for student 1, 2 values for student 2, and so on. Plot the scatter diagram. Well, I won't do all the points, but just to show you roughly what you do. 10, 13, so x is 10 and y is 13. X is 21 and y is 20. Go on, I'll do them all. X is 22, Y is 24. I think that one's there. 18 and 22 is here. 17 and 15. Is that one there? I think I'm about right. 14 and 21 is there. 20 and 11. And 16 and 18. So that would be around about there. So I think I've got those mostly correct. So that's plotting the scatter diagram. Now, describe and interpret. Describe means maths words. So mathematically, what have we got? Well, I would call that a positive correlation. We've got a bit of a funny value here, but if you ignore that one, the others are pretty close to a straight line. So I would say that we have a positive correlation, and what we'll do later on in this topic is we'll actually calculate a numerical measure of how strong that correlation is. And then we're asked to interpret. That means in the context of the question. Now, if you remember on the previous slide, as one increases, the other increases for positive correlation. So the listening test is on the bottom, and the written exam is at the side. So we can say as X, which is the listening test, test mark increases, what happens? Well, as people get a higher mark on the listening, they tend to also get a higher mark on the written. So as the listening test mark increases, so does the written test mark. Okay. So there's some practice on that in exercise 6A, and then have a look at the next example.